A lot of us out there are dedicated to our jobs. That inherently is not a bad thing, but as much as some bosses don't want to admit it, there is such a thing as being too dedicated to your job. Joining me this morning to talk about the 7 signs that you may be addicted to your work, I'm happy to have clinical psychologist Dr. Judith Zackson with us today. A pleasure to meet you, doctor.
Hi, Tim. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you here. Before we get into the signs, why don't you just tell us what is and what isn't considered work addiction?
Sure. Work addiction is when your life is out of balance. So when you're thinking about work a lot, when you just compulsed to just keep working.
Okay, well, that's simple enough. Well, it seems probably self-evident, but there are signs. We've got the checklist, so we want to get that checklist up so you can sort of go over them one by one. What are the 7 signs that you're addicted to work?
The first sign is that you keep thinking about, how can I make more time to work? Right. You keep saying that you'll be home at 1 p.m. or 5 p.m., but you come home at 8 p.m., so you work more hours than you mean to. Yeah. You try to work to push down emotions of anxiety, depression, helplessness. You don't feel like hanging out with your family. Sometimes that's hard too. And then you don't listen really to your family when they tell you, hey, you're working too much, it's time to stop working. Yeah. And then the big sign is when you're not working, when you're away from it, when you're eating dinner, when you're away for the weekend, you get stressed out. Working for you is a safe haven.
And then lastly, that it harms your health and your other activities that you want to try to partake in. Yeah? Exactly.
It harms your health where you don't go for an annual, you don't sleep enough, you don't do exercise, you just don't take care of yourself.
Right. Now, that first little bullet point there on the graphic, we don't want to mislead you. Thinking about work in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's when you're thinking about how you can go about working more than you already are working. And I imagine that's something you see a lot with people?
Yes, I do. So for a good example is when you have a trip planned to the Bronx Zoo with your kid, right? And then you're thinking about, I can do another project. So that trip goes put to the wayside, and you go and work more. Those are the signs when you keep pushing away your family, you keep missing dinners, you keep missing events just to work more.
How does this wind up impacting the family when one of the big breadwinners is addicted to work?
Yeah, it impacts from the childhood up to all the way to being a senior. So from childhood, when the parent works a lot, the kid learns that they have to fend for themselves emotionally, and they start focusing on tasks. Whether it's your iPad, whether it's your homework, you start hyper-focusing on it. And you take that hyper-focus and not dealing with feelings into your adulthood. And once you're an adult, it's really hard for you to start dating and be intimate with another person. And as we know, a lot of 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, they put off dating, they put off family because they'd rather focus on work. And that becomes problematic, especially for women when they're 38, when they're 40, and they want to have children. It's really difficult. So that keeps going through the lifetime, because even when you're with a spouse, and if I'm working late hours, my spouse feels alone. My spouse feels anxious, depressed. What's wrong with me? Why doesn't he or she want to spend time with me?
I do. I get that sense from what you're saying, that the roots that can lead to this can start very early in childhood, too. All right, so I think a lot of people are probably nodding their heads yes at this point. Uh-oh, that sounds like me. What can we do about it?
Yeah, what can we do about it? You know, first you have to say, I have a problem. You have to really realize I have a problem. And you also have to understand why you have that problem. Does it come from at home? Because when you were a kid, your parents pushed you to get into the best schools, to get into the best colleges, and you've carried that into your adult life. Is it because you don't want to hang out with your family? It's just too much stress for you? Yeah. Is it because you feel anxious, you feel depressed, and work is your safe haven? So it's really important to understand why you have it, and then you try to set behavioral techniques on how to stop working.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like introspection is a good way to sort of start this process. I'm imagining that's something a clinical psychologist can help you try to sort out, too.
Exactly. So when a person tries to stop on their own, behaviorally putting away your iPad, your iPhone when you come home, or not working late hours, if that doesn't work and you're still not having the life that you really want to, because it's so hard for you to be at home and just be, then is the time to go see a therapist. Because when you see a therapist looks for, why are you having this issue?
Yeah.
Is it because you have OCD, obsessional compulsive disorder, or anxiety? We try to understand underneath it.
Okay, so there you go. If this sounds like something that you're guilty of, if maybe you've checked off 6 of those 7 boxes, it's something to think about. So start by thinking about why that might be the case, and if necessary, go see a professional like Dr. Zackson. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you here.